First, why don't you introduce yourself to our viewers?
Okay, my name is Carol Olson, and I was recently a policy fellow for Safe State, so that's been a great experience. I work in the healthcare field, particularly injury and violence prevention at a level one trauma center. And I've also worked extensively in the community in different ways regarding injuries of mostly sexual domestic violence and community violence, but and mental health response. So I have a lot of experience both in the hospital and outside of the hospital.
Great. And Carol, I know you've shared with me some of your direct engagement experience, and I think it would be of value for some of our members to hear from someone in the injury and violence prevention field who has engaged with policymakers in the past. So maybe you could share a little bit about your personal engagement there in Virginia.
Yeah. In the beginning, I was always very anxious about talking to them. And then one time with Senator McClellan, whose district was in my voting district, when I voted, I decided to go up and talk to her and tell her I voted for her and thank her for all the work she did because she at that time did a lot of work for the cause area that I worked in, and I appreciate all of her efforts. And so it was just a spontaneous moment, and she took my hand and talked to me, and then we have continued talking ever since. Same thing with Senator Tim Kaine, is that I'm part of a community radio station, and we as a group went to him, and he helped us advocate for larger bills for communication access. And so using that experience with them, that I was able to sort of generate that same experience with Senator McClellan when I met her, to then feel comfortable going like, we need these kind of bills to push forward. And so just I've kept in touch with them throughout the years, and then through them met some other legislators and delegates, and have always found everyone really receptive if I call or email them to say I have something to talk about as well. So I felt like that initial four-way helped me develop a relationship with them, and you know it just helps to be present in the community, um, reach out and talk to them, and if they can't talk to you, their policy person will or somebody else will, and always inviting them to stuff as well so that they can come to things, and if they can, and talk about how they serve our community. So for me, I invited them to radio shows, and they came on, and to do PSAs about how to get the vote out, and to sometimes talk at community events. And so I found it, really easy, and they're very concerned about the same issues we are, right? Because they're actually a part of our community. They're really not separate from us. They're part of us. And when you align, if your issues and concerns align with theirs, that's who you talk to. They're going to listen to you. And it's been a really nice way to be able to talk in whatever job I've had, to be able to push forward, things that are important to me. And I'm a content expert in some things. So now building that relationship, they call me sometimes for content advice. But really that came from reaching out initially and telling them who I am, and the things that concern me, and the areas that I work in. And so it's nice. So I have been advocating on the Hill before, and been able to join up with senators then, even before I became a Safe States Policy Fellow.
That's great to hear. And you're right, developing a relationship with policymakers is so important. And so you mentioned inviting some of these lawmakers to your radio show. Have you been able to invite them to experience some of the injury and violence prevention work that you do in your community?
Oh, yes. So we have them in August. We have a tour scheduled for some of our senators and delegates and other legislative representatives to come to the level one trauma center I work at, and look at injury and violence prevention overall, from how a trauma system, health system, serves the public and the community in injury and violence. And we have community violence programs, sexual domestic violence programs, falls programs, distracted driving programs. We have other trauma outreach programs. So we do a lot for our community. We're one of the largest injury and violence prevention programs in the nation. And so we always invite our representatives in to see, the first step to serving injury and violence prevention is pre-hospital providers with our Center for Trauma and Critical Care Education, and then our injury violence prevention program, and then meet the whole teams that come that work with people from pre-hospital providers to all the way to aftercare and recovery. And then folks from my teams who might do intervention in the ED to also education and prevention in the community.
That's amazing. Great work. So if I could ask you, given all of your engagement to date, if you could go back to what you thought this would entail, or if you could go back to, prior to engaging in the policymaking process and think about now that you've engaged, what is or what are the top one or two most surprising things to you that you perhaps had a misconception about?
I think was how down to earth people would be and how much they would care about our community. I always thought legislators and senators were just very separate, and they didn't really care about the local voice in politics. And I found out once, really through my interactions with Senator Kane and Senator McClellan and others in my state, that is not true at all, that they care very deeply about everything that's happening, and that of course, it impacts their lives too. And I think one of the things you forget, that they're people and they live in our communities and they experience, violence and injury and car accidents and loss. And they care about these things too, because these things have also happened to them or their families. So I really found that once I got past my own fear, that they're very engaging to talk to and develop relationships with, and that they pair you with others. So I've been able to present to senators about injury and violence prevention work and the needs we have in the emergency department. And they've come to tour the hospital. I've helped, push bills and found senators on either side of the aisle to step forward together to help push some injury and violence bills for us in Virginia, and work with their policy workers as well and be part of a team that help promote bills that actually serve our public. And so I think it was also surprising is that I thought everything was very partisan, but actually there are many bills that are bipartisan, and that politics don't always divide on certain issues, but really you can work together. And they will, if you go to your senator of your choice, your senator in your area, they will often help you meet with somebody else who might be across the aisle who is also interested in this very same thing, and find that you can work together.
That's great to hear. So as we at Safe States urge more and more of our members to engage in the policymaking process, what would you tell to your colleagues in the injury and violence prevention arena to encourage that they get involved and that they engage in the policymaking process?
I think, programs like this, like your policy fellowship, are great. Actually, it can help alleviate a lot of fear, but also just email them. They want to hear from you. Call them. Show up at an event, invite them to one of yours, and maybe they can't always come, but they might send somebody else from their team. And so, they will really engage on issues that are important to them, because you're their voter, and you live in their community, and they want that your community be safe and healthy, and and so just find alignment with your issues and reach out and write them and call them.